Andrew and Milton, you are from Inspect Real Estate and you're both from Australia, but you've been in the UK now for a number of years with Inspect Real Estate. I want to ask you the question, what is the difference between Australian letting agents and UK letting agents? Talk to me.
I think one of the major differences is having worked as a letting agent here in the UK, I think they get bogged down in terms of how much administration they go through, particularly on before they actually show a property. A lot of time is spent behind the desk trying to pre-qualify someone, as opposed to, when you think about it, our clients are the landlords who need to put as many applications or offers, as you say, in front of them to give them the best choice as tenant. Okay. So I think they're kind of possibly letting their clients down in doing that, spending time behind the desk.
Does anybody in Australia want to be an estate or a letting agent? I think you call them property managers, but it's the same thing.
Yeah. So the natural role or progression, usually they start in lettings and then become a property manager. Okay. So
what does that actually mean? Because you see, in the UK, what you tend to find with letting agents is that they're in the lettings department, there will be, the process is split between lettings negotiators and letting managers. The lettings negotiator's job is to find the property, find the tenant for the property, get them all checked out, get them moved in. They'll then pass that through to another lettings negotiator in the back room, whose sole job it is to basically look after the incumbent tenant and make sure they pay the rent on time and everything's okay. And then when the tenant hands their notice, they pass it back to the front lettings manager, lettings negotiator, to sort it out. In the meantime, the manager is the person that goes out and puts the properties on the market. I had an Australian agent on this desk, on this sofa here, and they said people move into property management, but then all of a sudden then move over to more of a sales role, and their job is to not only get new properties for sale, but also get new properties for rent, but give it back to the property managers to manage.
Yeah,
so there seems to be like a synergy between lettings and sales in Australia.
Well, I think primarily also that there would be more people who are a property manager that do lettings as well. Okay, so
when you say do lettings, what does that mean?
So that means a daily for an average property manager in Australia, they would not only look after the current tenant living in the property, they would also find new ones. So it's only
new landlords or new tenants?
Both.
Okay, I mean, in the UK, the way 99.99% of agents do is they just whack the property on the portals and wait for the leads to come in.
Yes.
Okay.
So, but in Australia, because the normal agency sales is a real strong focus, and basically the salesperson wins a couple of managements and they put on the receptionist, who starts managing the portfolio up to about 60 to 90, and then at that point they think, well, what are we going to do? That one person's doing all the accounting, all the inspections, yes, all the lettings, everything, new business, and then they'll carve it off and think, all right, how about we put on someone who may just do the new business or the accounting, or hold
on, you're saying to me that letting agents employ people whose sole job it is to bring new business on?
Yes.
That's not the boss of the firm.
No, they're called a BDM.
Business Development Manager.
Okay. I can count on one hand, and I know an awful lot of people in the industry. I can count on one hand, and I'm not sure if I can even use all the fingers up, the number of letting agents who have business development people in their lettings agency. It's unheard of.
Wow. No, well, again, they're instrumental. I mentioned before that ProRental's growth, 76%, came about because of letting a property before anyone else. So new business and lettings are tied together.
Can the same person who gets new business in for sales be the same person that brings in new sales for lettings, or does it need different skills?
Yeah, it's very rare that property management, again, in Australia is like oil and water between the sales business. So yes, you may have someone that crosses over, but that would be very, very rare.
I'm not talking about the property management in terms of the day-to-day stuff. I'm talking about the business generation. You see, the problem with business generation with lettings is that it's such a long lead-in time. How do you incentivize people when it might take 12, 18 months to bring a landlord in, even though that landlord might bring in 200 properties? I've heard stories of this.
Yeah, so it is definitely the long game. But again, what we would really focus on is who is going to be our next 100 landlords. So that was what we'd focus on, 100 per person, because that's the most that you can keep the phone calls, the updates with what's sort of going on.
I mean, let's just say you employed a brand new BDM.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, surely they're not going to bring any new business in for quite a few months.
No, what they'd instantly do in Australia is latch themselves to the salesperson, because the salesperson may go and do an open house of one of the managed properties that they're selling. People who turn up, half of them would be investors, so they would get those opportunities and then contact them. So they could instantly, from a zero start, put on 10 new managements in a month, not a problem at all.
And this is bang on, is it?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's their KPIs, 8 to 10 a month.
Yet, the vast majority of 99.99 agents in the letting agents don't do this. Why do you think that is?
Probably they don't know how. That's the honest truth, isn't it? Because if you know how, you then put the systems in place. To me, success is all about being able to generate the leads and then convert them.
Okay.
And so you've got to have a good lead generation strategy.
So in the UK, we don't have such things as open houses.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have any other ideas?
Yeah, so there would be buyer inquiry, so which would come off the portals. And if that property has investor appeal, or they put in the message, hey, how much would this property rent for or lease for?
Mm-hmm.
Those leads, which normally get stuck in the sales department, should be given to the property managers or the new business department to follow up.
I mean, it's absolutely shocking that probably most letting agents who've been around more than 5 or 10 years probably have the details of most self-managed landlords on the application forms of all their properties.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And it's also absolutely shocking that most I don't know if you get this in Australia, but actually I don't think you do, because you're into relationship businesses, not transactional businesses, which is what the UK is. Did you know only 12% of people go back to the agent they bought the house off?
That makes sense. Yep.
But I bet in Oz it's probably 82%.
No, I don't know the statistics, but I still think there would be generally the property transaction would be 7 to 10 years. So would that estate agent be?
Yeah, but I've heard a lot of people do still follow agents around.
Yes.
But coming back is most sales frontline negotiators, the youngsters, bless them, what we are negotiators, if the person doesn't return their phone call after 2 phone calls, they normally get archived. And the person who's looking for a cash buyer up to a price of a terraced house or an apartment is probably a landlord, an investor. You should pick up the phone to them. Why do you think we in the UK are probably 10 years behind Oz? We are. Everyone's. I mean, I had Charlotte on here the other day, and she said, I came over to learn. I was teaching.
Yes. I think that, again, places like ARIC really kicked off the industry learning from each other. There is training which is legislation based, but the majority of the training is the industry standing up and teaching what they've done. So if I look at how one of the great reasons why our business scooted along is I went to a lot of events. Chris Rolls, who was my number one competitor, stood up publicly and spoke about how well he was doing his SEO, how well he was doing his MPS, how well his direct marketing was working. So I just sat down and wrote down what he said and then put a plan in place and did it. And so then I went back to the industry and presented, these are the things we did. So I think
would it be fair to say that, I think we spoke about this when we were interviewing with Lee Woodward, is that when you go to the likes of ARIC, everyone puts their swords down and helps each other out. But in the UK, that doesn't happen. So do you think we as an industry could come together to help each other out?
Yes, otherwise we're all going to be Ubered, right? Unless the industry gets together and as a collaborative improves what they do, then it's ripe for disruption, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And so us as the industry can, yes, sit down, work about our practices, share what is working, and then we become stronger together.
Thank you very much, Chance.
Yep.